My name is Irene Yolette, and I am 32 years old. 5 years ago, my sister told my parents I had dropped out of medical school. She lied. That single lie cost me my entire family. They cut me off, blocked my number, skipped my residency graduation, and were not at my wedding. For 5 years, I was no one's daughter. Then last month, my sister was rushed into the emergency room, bleeding, unconscious, dying. The trauma team paged the chief surgeon. The doors opened, and when my mother saw the name on the white coat walking toward her daughter's stretcher, she grabbed my father's arm so hard it left bruises. Let me take you back to the fall of 2019, to a kitchen table in Hartford, Connecticut, and the last time my father ever looked at me with pride. Growing up, there were 2 daughters in the Yolette house, but only one who mattered. My sister Monica is 3 years older. She came out of the womb performing. School plays, student council, the girl who could charm any adult at any dinner party. My parents, Jerry and Diane Yolette, Hartford, Connecticut, salt-of-the-earth middle class, adored her for it. Dad managed a manufacturing plant. Mom did part-time bookkeeping. They valued 2 things above all else: appearances and obedience. Monica delivered both flawlessly, every single day. I was the quiet one, the one with her nose in a biology textbook at Thanksgiving while Monica held court at the table. I was not rebellious. I was not difficult. I was simply invisible. There is a difference between being forgotten and never being seen in the first place. Here is a small example. 8th grade, I made it to the state science fair, the only kid from our school. Same weekend, Monica had a community theater performance. One guess where my parents went. When I came home with a second-place ribbon, Dad glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Rainey." He did not ask what my project was about. He never did. I told myself it did not hurt. I poured everything into my grades, my AP classes, my applications. I figured if I could not be the daughter they noticed, I would be the daughter they could not ignore. And for one brief moment, I was. The day I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science University's medical program, 3,000 miles from Hartford, something shifted. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, really looked at me, and said 5 words I had waited 18 years to hear. But first, you need to understand what Monica did when she realized the spotlight was moving. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday in April. Monica was visiting for the weekend. She was 22, working as a marketing coordinator at a firm in Stamford. Fine job, fine life. Fine was Monica's ceiling, though she would never admit it. Dad read the letter at the kitchen table. His eyebrows went up. Oregon Health and Science, he said slowly, like he was tasting the words. That's a real medical school. Then he looked at me. Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all, Rainey. It was not a compliment, not really, but it was the closest thing to one I had ever gotten from him, and I held on to it like oxygen. Mom called Aunt Ruth that night. She called her sister. She called 2 neighbors. Irene got into medical school. Can you believe it? Her voice had a pitch I had never heard before. Pride. Genuine, undiluted pride directed at me. At dinner, I glanced across the table at Monica. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that stops at the mouth. Her eyes were doing something else entirely. Calculating, measuring, recalibrating. I know that now. At the time, I just thought she was tired from the drive. That week, Monica started calling me more. 2, 3 times a week. How is packing going? Who is your roommate? What is Portland like? She asked about my schedule, my classmates, my professors. She remembered every name I mentioned. I thought my sister was finally seeing me. I thought maybe my getting into med school had unlocked something between us. I was feeding her ammunition. Every detail, every name, every vulnerability, and I handed it all over with a grateful smile. 3rd year of medical school. That is when everything cracked open. My roommate, my best friend, was a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She had grown up in foster care, no family to speak of, and she was the single reason I survived first year. When I called home once during a brutal anatomy exam week and Mom said, "Can't talk, Rainey, Monica's having a rough day at work," it was Sarah who sat on our apartment floor with me and said, "Their loss. Now get up. We have cadavers to memorize." Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in August of my 3rd year. No family, no support system, just me. I went to the dean's office the next morning, explained the situation. He approved a formal leave of absence, 1 semester, caregiver status, paperwork filed, spot held. I would come back in January. It was all documented, all legitimate. I moved into the spare bedroom at Sarah's apartment, drove her to chemo, held her hand in the oncology ward at 3 in the morning when the pain got so bad she could not breathe. I called Monica to tell her. I do not know why. Maybe I still believed she was the sister she had been pretending to be. I told her about Sarah, about the leave, about the plan to return in the spring. Monica's voice was syrup. Oh my God, Ray, I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad. I know they'd just worry. 3 days later, she called our parents. The call came at 11 at night. I was sitting in a plastic chair next to Sarah's hospital bed. She had had a bad reaction to the latest round of chemo, and they had admitted her overnight. My phone lit up. Dad, your sister told us everything. His voice was flat, arctic. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. Dad, that's not. Monica showed us the messages. She showed us proof. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. What messages? What proof? Dad, I'm sitting in a hospital right now. I'm taking care of my friend. Monica said you'd say exactly that. A pause. She said you'd have a story ready. My mother got on the line, her voice shaking. How could you lie to us for a whole year, Irene? Mom, please listen to me. I filed a leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number. Enough. Dad again. Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth. You've embarrassed this family enough. The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes. Sarah's 4 beeped on the other side of the curtain. My phone screen still showed the call duration. For minutes and 12 seconds. That is how long it took my parents to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text from Monica. I'm sorry, Rainey. I had to tell them. I couldn't keep your secret anymore. She was not sorry. She had just executed the most precise strike of her life, and she signed it with a broken heart emoji. I was 3,000 miles from Hartford. I had $46 in my checking account, and I had just become no one's daughter. I tried everything I could. Over the next 5 days, I called my parents 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th, Dad's number was blocked. Mom blocked me 2 days later. I sent 2 emails, one short, one long. The long one had my leave of absence paperwork attached as a PDF, the dean's direct phone number, Sarah's oncologist's name. Every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email got a response. I wrote a handwritten letter, mailed it priority from Portland. 5 days later, it came back returned to sender unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called Aunt Ruth, Dad's younger sister, the only person in our family who had ever treated me like I mattered equally. Ruth called Dad that same evening and called me back 40 minutes later, voice heavy. He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. He said you've made your bed. Ruth tried to tell him about the leave of absence. Dad hung up on her. 5 days, 14 calls, 2 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary. Every single attempt rejected, blocked, or returned. On the 6th day, I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, but because I realized they had chosen a long time ago. Monica just gave them permission to stop pretending. Sarah died on a Sunday morning in December. Quiet. Just the beep of the monitor going flat and the pale winter light through the hospice window. I was the only one in the room. No one from my family called. The one person I had told, Monica, was too busy tending to the lie she had planted to care that the reason for my leave of absence had just stopped breathing. I organized a small funeral. 6 people came. I stood at the front of a chapel that could hold 60 and read a eulogy to rows of empty pews. I did not cry, not because I was not broken, but because I had been crying for 3 months straight and there was nothing left. That night, I sat alone in Sarah's apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter, her jacket still hung by the door. I opened my laptop and stared at the application to re-enroll for the spring semester. Then I found it, tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy. She had bookmarked the chapter on the pancreas with a yellow sticky note that said, in her handwriting, shaky but deliberate, "Finish what you started, Irene. Become the doctor I know you are, and don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." She had written it weeks before she died. She knew she would not be there when I needed the push. I closed the laptop, opened it again, and filled out the re-enrollment form. 2 options, crumble or climb. I chose to climb. Not for my parents. Not for revenge. For Sarah, and for the version of myself she believed in. I went back in January with no family support, no safety net. I picked up extra student loans, took a part-time research assistant position, and ate hospital cafeteria leftovers more times than I will ever admit. Medical school does not care about your personal life. Anatomy exams do not pause because your family disowned you. 12-hour clinical rotations do not get shorter because you cried in the supply closet at 2 in the morning. So I stopped crying and started working. I worked like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I graduated on time. No one from Hartford came. I matched into a surgical residency at Mercyrest Medical Center back on the East Coast, a Level 1 trauma center, one of the busiest in Connecticut. That is where I met Dr. Margaret Thornton. Maggie, 58 years old, chief of surgery emeritus, built like a steel cable wrapped in a lab coat. She became the mentor I desperately needed and the mother figure I had lost. 3rd year of residency, I met Nathan Caldwell. He was a civil rights attorney doing pro bono work at a community clinic near the hospital. Calm eyes, dry humor. The first person I told the full story to who did not flinch, did not pity me, did not try to fix it. He just listened. Then he said, "You deserve better." 4 words. That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Maggie's backyard. 30 guests. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. I had sent an invitation to Hartford. It came back the way my letter had, unopened. Aunt Ruth was there, though. She cried enough for 2 parents. For 5 years after that, Monica maintained the narrative. At every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering, she performed the role of the grieving older sister. "We don't really talk about Irene," she would tell cousins. "It's too painful for Mom and Dad." But she did not stop at silence. She added details. She told our grandmother I was homeless. She told Uncle Pete's wife that she had heard from mutual friends I was in and out of rehab. She told our mother on Christmas Eve 2 years ago that she had tried to reach out and I had refused, that I was the one who cut them off. She flipped the entire story. The genius of it, and I used that word with disgust, was that Monica did not need my parents to forget me. She needed them to believe I had abandoned them. That way, their grief became proof. Their silence became justified, and she remained exactly what she had always been, the loyal daughter, the only one who stayed. Nathan told me something else over coffee one morning 6 months ago. He had been sitting on it for 2 years. 2 years ago, I got a call from HR at your old hospital, he said, setting his mug down carefully, the way he does when he is about to deliver bad news in his lawyer voice. Someone using a fake name had contacted them asking about your employment status. Whether you had ever been disciplined. Whether your credentials were legitimate. Who? I had a colleague trace the inquiry. The IP address came back to Hartford. The kitchen went very quiet. Monica had not told a lie and moved on. She had built an architecture of deception, load-bearing walls, reinforced beams, and she had spent 5 years making sure none of them cracked. Every holiday story, every whispered rumor, every fake inquiry was another brick. Then came Thursday night, January, 3 in the morning. The pager dragged me out of a dead sleep. The screen glowed in the dark, Level 1 trauma. MVC, single female, 35. Blunt abdominal trauma. Hemodynamically unstable. ETA, 8 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes. Driving in 6. The roads were empty and wet, that particular shade of black that January gives you in Connecticut. I ran through the case in my head the way I always do. Motor vehicle collision, blunt abdominal trauma, unstable vitals, likely splenic rupture, possible liver laceration. I had done this surgery 100 times. I badged in through the ambulance bay and walked straight to the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. 2 residents, a trauma nurse, anesthesia on standby. I picked up the intake iPad from the charge nurse's station and swiped to the incoming patient chart. Patient, Monica Ullette. DOB, March 14, 1990. Emergency contact, Gerald Ullette, father. I stopped walking. The hallway noise, the beeping, the intercom, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, it all pulled back like a tide. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I was not a surgeon. I was a 26-year-old sitting on a hospital floor in Portland, phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. Dr. Ullette? My charge nurse, Linda, appeared at my shoulder. You okay? I looked up, blinked, set the iPad down. I'm fine. Prep A2 and page Dr. Patel. I want him on standby. The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. And behind that ambulance, I knew before I could see them, were 2 people I had not faced in 5 years. The ambulance doors cracked open and the stretcher came fast. Monica was strapped down, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths, blood on her shirt, one hand hanging limp off the side rail. The paramedics rattled off numbers, blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, 2 large-bore IVs running wide. Behind them, running, came my parents. My mother looked like she had aged a decade, hair thinner, face drawn. She was in a bathrobe, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in flannel and jeans thrown on in a panic. His face was the color of old paper. That's my daughter, he shouted past the triage nurse. Where are they taking her? I need to talk to the doctor in charge. The nurse, Carla, a woman I had worked with for 3 years, put both hands up. Sir, family needs to wait in the surgical waiting area. The trauma team is already here. The chief is handling this personally. Get me the chief now. Carla glanced through the glass partition toward the trauma bay. She looked at me, gowned, gloved, my badge hanging from my scrub top. She read the name. Her eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second. I gave a small shake of my head. Not now. Sir, the chief is prepping for surgery. You'll be updated as soon as possible. The waiting room is this way. My parents were led down the hall. Mom was whispering prayers, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Dad kept turning back, looking through every window he passed. She's all we have, he said to no one in particular. Please, she's all we have. I heard it through the partition glass. Every word. She's all we have. As if I had never existed. I stepped into the scrub room alone. 30 seconds. That is all I allowed myself. I turned on the faucet, let the water run hot over my hands, looked at myself in the stainless steel mirror above the sink, distorted, warped, the way everything felt right now. Scrub cap on, badge visible. The face of a woman who had been surgically removed from her own family tree, now being asked to surgically save the woman who held the saw. Part of me wanted to walk out. Call Patel, let someone else carry this. But there was a woman on that table with a ruptured spleen and what looked like a grade 3 liver laceration. She was losing blood faster than we could replace it. She was going to die in the next 30 to 40 minutes if the best surgeon in this building did not operate. And the best surgeon in this building was me. I paged Patel directly. I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now and documenting in the chart. If at any point my judgment is compromised, you take the lead. I told Linda to note the disclosure in the nursing record. Everything by the book, everything on paper. Then I pulled on fresh gloves, pushed through the hors d'oeuvres, and looked down at the table. My sister's face, still bruised, the oxygen mask fogging and clearing. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. There were worry lines around her eyes that had not been there 5 years ago. For 3 seconds, she was not the woman who had destroyed my life. She was a body on my table. And that was exactly how I needed her to be. Let's go. Scalpel. 3 hours and 40 minutes. That is how long it took to rebuild what the steering column and the red light had torn apart. Ruptured spleen, we took it out. Grade 3 liver laceration, we repaired it with precision sutures, layer by painstaking layer. Internal bleeding from 2 separate mesenteric vessels, clamped, cauterized, controlled. I did not speak unless I needed to. Suction, clamp, lap pad, retract. My hands moved the way they had been trained to move. Steady, deliberate, fast when speed mattered, and slow when precision mattered more. At 6:48 in the morning, I placed the final closing stitch. Monika's vitals were stable. She was alive. Dr. Patel, who had been standing silently in the corner the entire time, pulled his mask down. "Irene," he said quietly. "That was flawless. You want me to talk to the family?" I peeled off my gloves, dropped them in the bin, washed my hands. "No. This one's mine." The waiting room had that fluorescent hush that hospitals get at 7 in the morning. 2 other families were scattered in the far corners. A television murmured weather reports to no one. And in the center row, sitting rigid, sleepless, terrified, were my parents. I pushed through the double doors, still in my surgical scrubs, mask pulled down around my neck, scrub cap off, hair pulled back. My badge hung at chest level, printed in clean block letters anyone could read from 6 feet away. Dr. Irene Ulett, MD, FACS, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Dad stood first. He always stood first. "Doctor, how is she? Is Monika?" He stopped. His eyes had dropped to my badge, then rose to my face, then dropped to the badge again. I watched the recognition move through him like something physical. A tremor that started in his hands and climbed to his jaw. Mom looked up a half second later. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her right hand shot to Dad's forearm and clamped down. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds that held 5 years. I spoke first, calm, clinical, the same voice I used to address every family in this room. "Mr. and Mrs. Ulett, I'm Dr. Ulett, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Your daughter Monika sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration in the accident. Surgery was successful. She's stable and currently in the ICU. You'll be able to see her in approximately 1 hour. Mr. and Mrs. Not Mom and Dad." I watched that land. I watched it cut. My mother moved first. She took a step toward me, arms lifting, a sob already breaking through her chest. "Irene. Oh my God. Irene." I stepped back. Half a step. Polite. Unmistakable. She froze. Her hands hung in the air between us, then slowly, painfully, dropped to her sides. Dad's voice came out rough. "You're a doctor." "I am." "You're the chief." "I am." But Monika said. He closed his mouth, opened it, closed it again. I could see the machinery of his mind trying to reassemble 5 years of certainty that was crumbling in real time. Mom was crying now. "We thought you dropped out." "We thought." "She told you I dropped out. That I had a boyfriend with a drug problem. That I was homeless. That I refused to contact you." I kept my voice level. No shaking. No tears. None of it was true. Not a single word. Dad tried to redirect, old instinct. "This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister is in the ICU." "I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives." "So yes, Dad, I'm aware of where she is." He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who had never been at a loss for a decree, had absolutely nothing. Mom reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. "The letters," she whispered. "You said you sent letters." 2 emails with my leave of absence paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter mailed priority. You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope." She pressed her fist against her mouth. "I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to talk to you. You told her to stay out of it." I was not accusing. I was reciting. These were facts. And facts do not need volume. Then Linda appeared at the door. "Dr. Ulett, I'm sorry to interrupt." The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. "The Physician of the Year Selection Committee sends their congratulations on tonight's surgical outcome." She had no idea she had just detonated a second bomb in that waiting room. Mom looked at me, eyes swollen, bathrobe still on. "Physician of the Year? It's an internal recognition. It's nothing." I turned to Linda. "Thank you. I need to check post-op vitals." "Excuse me." I walked toward the ICU corridor, measured steps, spine straight. I did not look back. But I heard my mother's voice behind me, small and ruined. "Jerry, what have we done?" And I heard something I had never heard before. My father saying nothing. Because silence, for the first time, was the only honest thing he had left. For hours later, Monica's eyes were open, glassy from the anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, blinked at the four-pole. Then her gaze tracked sideways to me. She squinted. "Read my badge." "Read it again." The color drained from her face in a way I had seen before, but only in patients who had just been told their prognosis was bad. "Irene." "Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You're going to make a full recovery. You're a doctor. Not a question. A reckoning. I'm the chief of this department. Have been for 2 years. I watched it happen, the same spectrum Dad had gone through, but slower, because Monica was processing it through a morphine drip and what I suspected was dawning terror. Confusion, then disbelief, then fear, and then there it was, the quick flicker behind the eyes. Calculation. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was trying to figure out how to spin this. "Irene, listen. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me." I nodded toward the glass door where 2 figures stood in the hallway, faces wrecked, eyes red. "You need to explain it to them." I updated her chart, checked the drain, and left without another word. I did not stay to hear what happened next, but the entire ICU floor heard it. Monica's room was not soundproof, and neither was the truth. She tried the only play she had left, playing the victim. Big heaving sobs, the heart monitor spiking. "Mom, Dad, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far." Dad stood at the foot of the bed, his voice barely controlled. "Monica, Irene is a surgeon. She's the chief of trauma surgery at this hospital." "I didn't know that." "She said she sent letters, emails. She called 14 times. Mom's voice was flat, hollow. "Is that true?" "She's exaggerating. You know how she..." "Ruth tried to tell us," Dad said, and this time his voice cracked. Not from sadness, but from the structural failure of everything he had believed for 5 years. 2 years ago, Ruth called and said Irene was in residency. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story." "What is the full story, Monica?" The heart monitor beeped. The 4 dripped. And Monica, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had no script. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 that morning. She did not sit down, did not hug anyone. She stood in the middle of that room and said, "I've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation, and I'm not waiting 1 more minute." She pulled out her phone, opened a folder she had labeled, I found out later, Irene Proof. Screenshots of every email I had sent my parents in those first desperate days. The PDF of my leave of absence from OSU, signed by the dean, stamped with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo of my residency graduation, me in a cap holding the diploma, Aunt Ruth beside me, the only family member in the frame. She held the phone out. Mom took it with trembling hands. "And here," Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. "This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago." She read it aloud. "Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace." The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling. What replaced the calculation in her eyes was something I had never seen there before, the look of someone who had run out of rooms to hide in. "You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake," Ruth said, looking straight at Monica. "But this family has not had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout." She turned to my parents. "And you two let this happen, not because you did not love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier." Nobody argued. There was nothing left to argue with. Mom sank into the chair beside Monica's bed, but she was not looking at Monica anymore. She was scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my emails one by one. She stopped on the last one, the one I had sent the night before my residency graduation. "I know what it says. I have reread it 100 times in my own sent folder. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I graduated from residency today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter. I never stopped being your daughter." Mom doubled over in the chair. It was beyond crying. It was the sound of someone meeting the full weight of a mistake they can never undo. Dad stood at the window, his back to the room, his shoulders shaking. Aunt Ruth told me later it was the first time she had ever seen her older brother cry in 62 years. Not once. Not at their mother's funeral. Not when his business nearly went under. Not ever. He cried now, silently, facing the parking lot while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica lay in the bed. She had stopped talking. The floor dripped. Her eyes were fixed on a point on the ceiling. There was nothing left to perform. No audience that would believe her. The persona she had worn for 35 years was lying in pieces on the linoleum, and no amount of charm or clever reframing was going to put it back together. Ruth's voice was quiet. "You missed her wedding, Jerry." Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. "Do you understand what that means?" Dad did not turn from the window, but he spoke. For words, low, cracked down the center. "What have we done?" Not a question. He was not asking. He was convicting. I came back that afternoon, end of my shift, 22 hours since the pager woke me. My parents were still there. Mom stood up the second I walked in. "Irene, baby, I'm so sorry." I held up my hand, gently but firm. "I hear you, and I believe you're sorry. But sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. What I need is time." Dad turned from the window. He looked like he had aged 5 years since this morning. "We want to make this right. Then you need to understand something." I kept my voice even. This was not anger. This was clarity, the kind that only comes after you have burned through every other emotion, and what is left is the truth, clean and simple. I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged you to listen for 5 days from 3,000 miles away. I'm someone who built a life, a whole life, without you. And if you want to be part of it now, it will be on my terms. Not Monica's. Not yours. Mine. Dad opened his mouth. Old reflex. Then he closed it and nodded. A small, devastated nod. I looked at Monica on the bed. "When you're recovered, you and I are going to have a conversation. A real one. But not today. Today, you're my patient. I don't mix the two." I left. Spine straight, steps measured. I did not turn around. I am not closing the door, but I am the one who decides when it opens, how wide, and who walks through. 2 weeks later, Monica was discharged. I chose the location, a coffee shop in Middletown, halfway between her apartment and my house. Neutral ground. Nathan came but sat at a separate table near the window, pretending to read briefs. Monica walked in looking like someone who had been hollowed out. The confidence she usually wore like cologne was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat down, wrapped her hands around a cup she did not drink from, stared at the table. "I'm not going to yell at you," I said. "I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why." Silence, long enough that the barista called someone's name and it echoed off the walls. Then, because you were going to be everything I wasn't, and I couldn't handle it. I let that sit. That's honest. First honest thing you've said to me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. Sorry doesn't put Dad at my wedding. Sorry doesn't unsend that box Mom shipped back to me. My high school graduation things returned like I was dead to her. She looked away. Her eyes were wet. Real tears. I know the difference now. Then she said something I was not expecting. "I also called your medical school twice. I tried to get them to revoke your leave of absence. I told them you had fabricated the caregiver documents." The coffee shop hummed around us. I stared at her. "Your dean wouldn't listen to me. He protected you." "He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth." "That's not the same thing." I leaned back in my chair, took a breath. "I'm not cutting you out of my life. But I'm setting conditions. You will tell the full truth to every family member you lied to, every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab or living on the street. You will correct every single story. In writing. An email to the family group, all 47 people. Ruth will confirm everyone receives it." Another nod. Small. Defeated. I met with my parents separately the following week. We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Dad had read my acceptance letter all those years ago. "I'm open to rebuilding," I said. But I need you to go to family counseling, both of you. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the phone to check. Dad's jaw tightened. We don't do that in this family. That's exactly why we're here, Dad. Mom put her hand on his arm. Jerry, please. He looked at her. Looked at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. Fine. I stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. We can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Apologies expire. Boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure. 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala. 200 people in the ballroom of the Hartford Marquis Hotel. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan was at a front table. Maggie Thornton sat beside him, the faintest smile on her face, the one she reserves for moments she has been engineering for years. This year's Physician of the Year, a surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients have set a new standard for this institution. Dr. Irene Ulett, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Standing ovation from the surgical staff who had seen me work. I walked to the stage, spotlight warm, podium solid under my hands. I kept it short. 5 years ago, I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team in the 3rd row. Then I looked at the back of the ballroom, last row. 2 seats Ruth had quietly arranged. My parents. Mom in a navy dress she had probably bought that week. Dad in a tie he clearly hated. Both sitting with their hands in their laps, looking up at the stage with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride waging war on the same face. And sometimes I said, the ones you're born to find their way back. Late, but here. Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood. Applause filled the rest. Monica sent the family email on a Wednesday night. Ruth confirmed delivery to all 47 addresses. I did not read it until the next morning. It was 3 paragraphs. No excuses, no flowery language, just the facts laid bare. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me. The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Ruth in tears. Cousin David in Vermont sent Monica a 1-line reply, I don't know who you are anymore. Our grandmother, Nana June, 89 years old, the matriarch who had stopped asking about me at Thanksgiving because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. I'm 89 years old, she said, her voice paper-thin but furious, and I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Irene, forgive an old woman for not seeing it. There's nothing to forgive, Nana. You were lied to. We all were. Nobody organized a boycott of Monica. Nobody sent group texts declaring her dead to them. But the trust she had stockpiled, the currency she had been spending for 35 years, was gone. You could feel it in the silence after her email, in the replies that did not come, in the invitations that quietly stopped arriving. No one punished Monica. They just stopped believing her. And for someone who had built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. Mom took to it immediately. Dad struggled. He went, he sat in the chair, he answered questions in as few words as possible. But he went. The therapist told him, Ruth relayed, that his need to be right, his refusal to revisit a decision once it was made, had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Monica had provided the lie, but Dad's pride had cemented it into place. He did not argue with that. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter. Handwritten. The irony was not lost on either of us. I failed you, she wrote. Not just when I believed Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table. I did not cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter. Sarah's card. My returned letters. The wedding invitation that came back unopened. And I placed Mom's letter inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is just rearranging what you carry. Monica and I have had 3 coffee meetings now. Each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The third time, she said something that actually landed. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I want you to know I'm trying not to be that person anymore. I took a sip of my coffee, set it down. Then show me. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time. She nodded. Did not push. Did not perform. That was new. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 inches left upper abdomen, fading from red to white over the coming year. Every time she catches her reflection, she will see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase, the sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory. 5 years of silence, lodged somewhere between my ribs. We are even, in the strangest, most painful way 2 sisters can be even. And maybe with enough time, enough real, unglamorous, consistent time, we will find our way to something that is not even something better, something new. Sunday morning, first week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window. The kind that does not stick, but makes everything look like it is being gently forgiven. I am making French toast. Nathan is grinding coffee beans, singing off-key to something on the radio. EPO is stationed under the table, optimistic about crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad, standing on the porch in their winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he is not sure what to do with his hands. Mom has a tin of homemade cookies, her shortbread, the ones she used to make for every school event of Monica's and none of mine. Hi, Mom says, nervous, hopeful. Come in, I say. Coffee's almost ready. Dad steps inside, looks around the kitchen like he is cataloging everything. The house he has never been in. The life he almost never knew existed. He clears his throat. Can I help with anything? I look at him. My father, 62 years old, standing in my kitchen for the first time, asking permission to be useful. You can set the table, Dad. He nods, goes to the cabinet I point to, takes out plates, counts them, looks at me. 4. He sets them down one by one carefully, like they might break if he is not gentle. Nathan hands him coffee. Mom hugs me at the stove. Not a dramatic movie hug. Just a quiet one. Arms around me, forehead against my shoulder. No words. Holding on. EPO thumps his tail. Snow falls outside. The French toast sizzles. It is not perfect. It is not the childhood I deserved or the reconciliation movies promise. But it is real. And real is more than I had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Irene Yolette. I am 32 years old. And I am finally, slowly, carefully letting myself be someone's daughter again. 4 plates. It is a start.